want you to live with us. We want you to live with the Greeks, the Hellenists. And there are plenty of Jews who fell for this, by the way. It's a very logical argument. They said, live with us together, marry our daughters, bring your culture to the table, bring your massive intellect to the table, and let's grow together. Let's grow into even more beautiful people. Bring your musical skills to the table. We'll add it to our musical skills. You're so clever. We'll give you Pythagoras, and you do something. You add to Pythagoras. We give you. We have a. I don't know if you know, but Maimonides, the Rambam, quotes Aristotle. Right? But there's a very big difference. The difference for a Jew in knowledge is that he has that knowledge to serve his God. The Hellenist position was that you have that knowledge for its own sake. What's God got to do with it? Don't tell me God. You tell me you've got a Torah, fantastic. You tell me it's got big wisdom in it, you've got a Gemara with big wisdom in it, fantastic. We believe you. But don't tell us God wrote it. Say that the greatness of humanity achieved the pinnacle of civilization, and that is what we subscribe to. But you want to tell me there's something more? There's not something more. And if you tell me you've got access to something more, we want to kill you. Because you have no right to assert that there's something more in front of us. Who are you to assert that? And so the miracle of Hanukkah needs to be understood against all of this background music. Because let's understand, they sacked the Beis HaMikdash. There was no oil for the menorah. Everybody knows the story so well. They wanted to find a jug of pure olive oil. Let me explain what that means, pure olive oil. It doesn't mean oil that's tainted with other oil. There's nothing wrong with that. Any oil is kosher for the menorah. You should know that. Any oil is kosher for the menorah. So what was the big deal about this oil? The big deal was that it wasn't tomei. Tomei and tahoya is the difference between contaminated spiritually and not contaminated spiritually in relation to having touched somebody that's dead. That's the problem. The problem is the spiritual current which exists after contact with the dead. And that spiritual current needs to be eradicated, and there's a way to do it, and you have to go to the mikveh, but until then, you're tomei. And if you're tomei, you can't come into the Beis HaMikdash. Now, when the menorah had to be relit, you should know that the halakha is that in an emergency, you can use oil that's tomei. It doesn't have to be olive oil. It doesn't have to be tahoya. You need to get the menorah lit. You know, if we have elaborate laws in terms of kashrus, right? Elaborate laws. But we have elaborate laws on suicide. And if you are in a position where the only food that you can eat is non-kosher, and unless you eat, you will die, the halakha requires you to eat the non-kosher food. It's not an option, it's a duty. And it's the same avera not to eat that non-kosher food as it is to eat pork when there's an alternative. So when they wanted to relight the menorah, why were they running around looking for this jug of oil, this cruse of oil that had to be so pure, had to have the stamp of the Kohen Gadol? Why? There's no halakhic reason for it. But to understand it is to understand the whole issue of what we've been talking about. That the Greeks are saying, temple, nice building, beautiful architecture. You want to relight your menorah? Relight your menorah. Gesundheit. But relight it with a touch of Greek. We want to touch a bit, add a little Greek into it. And Jews understood that there has to be a point beyond which we are different. And that difference has to be respected and maintained for one's own self-preservation. And you know, it's an extraordinary thing. You should know that, I mean, I don't need to tell you, you know this yourself. Throughout history, we have had Jews who've kept nothing. Right? Learned no Torah, kept no mitzvahs. When push comes to shove and they are offered the option of death or renouncing their Judaism, they don't. They haven't. Historically, numerically, they haven't. Why? So, you know, there's a very big difference between dying for a belief, which is a policy a policy decision that you make for your own growth and benefit, or dying for a belief where you have no belief in it. You know, it's a much different thing. I'll give you an example. In all the literature on the Holocaust and I have a friend whose father he's died now, Oliver Scholem. He told us the story. They were in Treblinka, and on Yom Kippur the Nazis brought in a pot of steaming, beautiful beef. It wasn't pork. It was beef. It was kosher, and it was kosher to eat. And there was a guy who was so hungry. He hadn't eaten for days, and he was so hungry. And it was Yom Kippur, and he had never fasted Yom Kippur in his life. And they brought in this hot tub of steaming beef on Yom Kippur. And he decided he wasn't going to eat the beef. He was going to, and he died. He died that day. Died of starvation that day. Now you have to ask yourself, how is this possible? And the answer is that there is a level in our neshama, a helik Eloka mimal, a part of God Himself, where we have a different level of consciousness, spiritual consciousness. And when the Greeks wanted to trample on that, or not even trample on it, politely invite us to contaminate it, and you know, these words are emotional words. Contaminate sounds like it's dirty. I don't mean that. I mean that the role of a Jew is a different role, and you can't mix it together. It doesn't work. It doesn't work for the Jew, and it doesn't work for the non-Jew. This is politically incorrect stuff, and people are uncomfortable with it at the moment, because the fashion at the moment is that we have to believe that everybody's the same. Well, they're not the same. Men are not the same as women. Women are not the same as men. Are they equal? Of course they're equal. Should they have equal opportunity and equal pay and equal education and equal freedom from being beaten up by their partner? Of course. But they're not the same. You can't say they're the same. And the Greek position was, we are the same. And if you want to say there's something beyond our sameness, we can't tolerate that, because that is contrary to everything we stand for. You know, you have let me give you an example of Yishmael and Yitzhak. Avram has a son, Yishmael. And God appears to him and says, I'm going to give you a son. And he says, I've already got a son. And God says, and Avram says, and he's a good son. And he's going to be socially, I'm telling you, as a matter of prophecy, he's going to ultimately do tshuva and be a good man. And be a good human being, says God. You understand? He is going to be a good human being, but you have to have another son. Yishmael wasn't Jewish. Yitzhak was Jewish. Does it mean that Yishmael is inferior? It doesn't mean that he's inferior. It means that he's a good man. He does tshuva. It starts off not so good, but he does tshuva in the end. He's a good man. He's a man with good high social responsibility. But that is not enough for the job at hand of bringing Ruchnius into Gashmius and elevating Gashmius into Ruchnius, making a Dira B'Taktoinim. That's the job entrusted to Jews to do. And they have to do that without contamination, without believing that they need anything outside of Torah and mitzvahs to accomplish this goal. The miracle of Hanukkah is evidence to the fact that man is not the highest pinnacle of existence. Man's service to God is the highest pinnacle of existence. You can be a wonderful human being, with all the traits you can be intelligent and cultured and kind and supportive and decent. And they're all wonderful qualities, and no one's suggesting that they should be minimized in any way. But that is not the only job of a Jew. The job of a Jew starts where that leaves off. And that job is to learn Torah and do mitzvahs. And when we learn Torah and do mitzvahs, we elevate the world. Now, let me give you an example. There are situations where that intelligent, good people can argue logically to a certain position, right? Mm. And I'll give you a really hard example, really tough. Israel. There is a tension between, is Israel a country for Jews, or is it a country
for all the citizens?
For all citizens, right? And noble people will espouse. How many Arabs live in Israel? 2 million? 2 million? And they vote, they speak Hebrew, the good people. Don't tell me they're all bad people. They're not bad people. They're good people. They have children. They want to educate their children.
They know for sure.
The different Arabs who lives in Jerusalem.
Excuse me. Let me make the point.
Still the same shit.
Or do you say, and that's logical, their position, and it's democratic, and it's fashionable, or do you say that as a matter of Torah, Israel has to be a land of Jews? That's the Torah position, not the democratic position. Do we believe democracy is noble? We do. Yeah. Do we believe? But now it depends for who. For a non-Jew, the logic is very interesting and very, very persuasive and beautiful. But for a Jew who learns Torah and understands that his relationship is to do what God says to do, then Israel has to be a place for Jews. Because that's a tough example. Let me give you another example. Let me give you an easier example. We have Aseret Adibris. We have 10 commandments, right? One of those 10 commandments is you can't murder. That's one of the 10 commandments. Is there a reason given? No reason given. Is there an option given? No option given. You can't murder. There are certain halakhic exceptions to that. If somebody's coming to kill you, you have the obligation to kill them first. If somebody wants to, there are some exceptions to it. But the halacha is that we cannot murder. We can't murder. Now, is that always the case? Comes an intellectual with a good heart and a good brain, and he says, what about my father? My father's in a nursing home and he is terminally ill. He cannot be saved. He is in agony, right? He is in agony. And we should be able to terminate his life.
Only in Switzerland.
Huh?
Only in Switzerland.
No, in Australia now.
Not in Israel.
Huh?
In Israel, I don't think.
No.
You have to go to Holland.
No.
From North Territory.
I'm talking about Australia. We now have in Australia, and you've got good people. They're not devils. They're not criminals. They're good people who mean well, and they want to have assisted dying as part of the law, and it is. I don't know how many states it's in. And it's very logical. Yeah. Who says it's not logical?
North Territory.
But you have to understand clearly that it is 100% osa. It's forbidden. You can't do it. There's no permission in halakha whatsoever to accelerate a person's death for, what it's, the Talmud gives an example. A man jumps off a cliff to his death and a person shoots him with an arrow on the way down. Is the guy guilty of murder or not? He's going to die in 1 second anyway. Is he guilty of murder? No. 100% guilty of murder.
Because he killed him.
Yeah, because he shortened his life by a microsecond. You have no right to do it. Now, the Greeks would say, what are you talking about? Let's use human logic. Let's be good people. Let's be kind. Let's save somebody from the pain and the suffering. And a Jew has to say to that, I'm sorry, who says we understand everything? I don't understand everything. God says not to do it, we don't do it. God says to do something, we do it. You tell me film look funny, they look very funny. Look crazy to put on film in this day and age, this black box with the straps and here on your head, and it has to be straight, not crooked, and this and that. Why? What logic is there in that? We are not interested in what logic there is in that. We are interested in the fact that Hashem says, put on film every day, which isn't Shabbos and Yom Tov, if you're a man, you have to do it. So we do it. And the whole tension between the Greeks and the Jews at the time of the Hanukkah issue is this issue of, are we living what is logically a good life, or are we living a godly life? And a Jew's obligation is to live a godly life. Of course, there's no contradiction. A godly life can't be a bad life, but you have to understand it for what it is. If the mitzvah is to do X, you have to do X. There are times when the mitzvah is forbidden to be done, so you don't do it. Because then it's an avera to do it if it's not available to do it. Now, then there's another argument that the Greeks had. They said, all right, you want to have a different dimension. We don't believe it, but it's only for 5 minutes. It's for 5 minutes a day. It's It's when you get up and you daven, or when you're putting on your tefillin, or when you're learning your Torah, you're doing your mitzvah. But the rest of the time, it's Tuesday or Wednesday, and you have to go to work, you have to fix your kids' teeth, you have to pay your taxes, you have to pay your mortgage, you have to fight with this one and fight with that one, or not fight with this one and not fight with that one. That's harder. So the rest of the time, you're exactly the same as us. So that's also wrong. And let me explain this. We have a very interesting MIKEITZ argument in the Gemara between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel on the menorah. On the menorah, right? Everybody's agreed that you have to light 8 candles. Why? Because the oil was enough for one day. Actually, it wasn't. It's a myth. It wasn't enough for one day. You know how we know that? It's interesting. I'm just going on a sidetrack for 1 second so you know. If the oil was enough for one day, we'd light 7 candles, because the oil would have been enough. But the oil wasn't enough for one day. So the miracle was also on the first day, because the oil lasted enough for the first day. It wasn't enough for the first day. But what is the miracle? The miracle is, everybody knows that the oil, they wouldn't use any other oil. They wanted to do it the best way possible to reconnect with their God in an absolute manner. And then it's God's job to look after us. And so the oil lasted the 8 days. Now there's a very interesting MIKEITZ, I was just about to explain it, between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. Beis Shammai says, on the first night you light 8 candles, right? And second night 7, and third night 6. And Beis Hillel says, first night 1, second night 2. And the halakha is like Beis Hillel. So that's what we do. We light 1 on the first night. The Rebbe explains the chassidus of this. What's the chassidus of it? That as we travel through that miracle, each one of us, you have to know that the process has got to be increasing that spiritual awareness every day of your life. And not letting it be for 5 minutes, and then you've got breakfast, and then you've got lunch, and then you've got this, and then you've got that. Sure, all of those things are true as well, but you can eat breakfast with the perspective of godliness. That's what the Greeks didn't want us to do. You can pay your mortgage with the same pain that you pay the mortgage. You can pay it understanding that that's Hashgacha Protestant, that's your Nisoyan, that's your test. That's what you're doing. And there's nothing to be unhappy about. There's nothing to be disappointed about. That's what Hashem wants. And it's a fascinating thing about, we've learned a lot about Betochen together. And I don't know if you know, but I've just written a new book on it, and it's coming to Australia in a couple of weeks. And this whole issue, we did 5 shurim on it, they're recorded. This whole issue of Betochen is an energy which propels the event happening to you. So it's no mystery that the oil lasted 8 days. If the Yidden in the Beis HaMikdash wanted to relight the menorah in a pure way, in the total pure relationship that they have with their God, and they are prepared to believe in that absolutely, then they're entitled to have our God look after us. And for people with that level of betochen, that's what happens. Hashem does look after them in that way. So that's the lesson of Hanukkah. The lesson of Hanukkah is, it's a nice story about the oil. It's a miracle. It's wonderful. But really, Hanukkah is really understanding that you and I, as Jews, are different. Not better, not worse, but different. different responsibilities. They overlap. We have legs. A non-Jew has legs. A horse has legs. A dog has legs, and we have legs. But our legs have to be for a higher purpose than just living naturally, just earning money, just eating, just drinking, just sleeping, just procreating. That's just not enough for us, even if you do it beautifully like the Greeks did. Even if you do it with logic, and you do it with beauty, and you do it with drama and music and wonderful sculpture and beautiful architecture, all lovely. But for a Jew, it's missing the main game. The main game is that our relationship is with our God. And we cannot lose sight of that for a second. And you lose sight of that for a second, you're lost. You live a life, but it's a different sort of life.
So it's not easy to be a Jew, isn't it?
No.
No.
It's difficult, it's challenging.
It's difficult and it's challenging, and it's worth it.
It's worth it, yeah.
So l'chaim.
Stop. Press the button.
That's right, press the button.
See, even the non-religious in Israel is all like